Fear. A lot of people recently have congratulated me on buying my R230 SL65, but a lot of them have said, I've owned an SL55 in the past, I really love that platform, but I was always too afraid to own the SL65 because of how much they cost to maintain. And in today's video, we're going to be answering just that. How much does it cost to own an SL65? Now, I haven't owned this car for all that long. I bought it about a month ago. However, it came with a lot of service documentation detailing the ownership history from 2014 until 2025. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the 3 most expensive years of maintenance, and we'll find out how much it costs to own an SL65. All right, time to talk service history. Now, the previous owner of this car told me that the owner before him had an aftermarket warranty on the car, and he owned the car for a significant portion of its life, from 2014 until 2022, and he used that aftermarket warranty. Anything that would go wrong with the car, I was told, was serviced, and that's evidenced by, well, all of this paperwork. And we're going to dive into the 3rd most expensive year of ownership for this car, and that was 2014. Now, the first service bill in here is for a battery. I don't exactly have the mileage on when this was done, but it was replaced in July of 2014, and that total came to $614.30. For those of you who don't know, the SL65 has 2 batteries, one at the front for the starter and one at the rear for the accessories in the car. So you always have to replace both batteries, and it can be kind of annoying. In this case, $614.30. But then we move on to kind of general servicing. The first real service on this car was performed in August of that year, and it was relatively basic. An oil service was performed, and some clips for the grille on the front bumper were replaced. Not really a huge deal. Total for that came to $223.49. Really not too notable at all. But then in 2014, we start to see some bills. The very first service that was performed was a new key was programmed to the car. That wasn't cheap. That was $417.95 for the key and the programming to the car. But then comes line item B. Customer states there is a whining noise from the engine, inspect and repair, and the tech notes that they found that the ABC pump, the famed suspension pump for this car, was making noise, and they recommended that it be replaced. Cost of the pump, $2,098.80. Cost of that service alone to replace it, $3,357.15. But it doesn't end there. Line item C, customer states there's a ticking noise from the front end diagnose, and the tech found that the SAM, the security and acquisition module, was faulty. That was replaced. That part alone cost $868, and the total for that part of the service, $1,301.62. And that brings the entire total of this service to $5,076.72 plus $39.70 in tax. Now, the insurance and the aftermarket warranty on this car took off $4,658.77, meaning that the owner actually paid $457.65 for the service. But woof, that is a big one. Most people are really afraid of the ABC system with this car, and well, I guess that makes sense. It is really expensive to replace the pump. This was all done at 29,339 miles, so a while ago, but less than 50,000 miles ago in the case of this car. So that was a big one, but I'm happy to see that it was done and it's been documented. And that brings the total of the 2014 service to $5,953.49. Now, I couldn't really figure out the mileage of exactly how far the owner had gone between those 2 records. The first record didn't have any mileage on it at all, so really it was difficult to figure out. But between that and the next service record that was performed, the guy only covered 7 miles, bringing his cost per mile to $851 per mile in 2014. A heck of a way to start SL65 ownership, but again, I think the guy just, whenever something was wrong, took it to the Mercedes dealer and said, blank check, do whatever you need to do to make the car perfect. So 2014, starting out with a bang. The second most expensive year of ownership follows 2014 in short order. 2015, we start off in March when this car needed front brakes. It needed brakes and rotors and pad wear sensors. Now, these cars don't share the same braking system found in the SLR. They are different and less expensive, but that does not mean that they are cheap. The front pads alone were $350 for the set, and the rotors cost $935 each. After you factor in the pad wear sensors and some labor, the total for this service came to $2,000 $585.29. Ouch. Not a surprise, as this car's brakes are very large, but oof, that is a big one. A month later, in April of 2015, at 35,769 miles, this car went back to Mercedes-Benz, the customer stating that on occasion it would idle roughly. After an inspection, the tech determined that it was the coil pack. The left coil pack needed to be replaced. Now that is a huge deal with this car, as there are two coil packs, one for the left, one for the right. This car has two spark plugs per cylinders, and the coils are not individual to each spark plug in each cylinder. They come in these huge long sections, and you have to replace the entire thing even if you have just one bad ignition coil. And they are not inexpensive. The part alone was $1,400 back in 2015. But it doesn't stop there. In addition to some other minor things, the owner had all 24 spark plugs replaced, and that cost $490 just for the spark plugs alone. He also had a service B performed, which is just routine maintenance of this car, replacing the engine oil and filter, replacing the washer fluid and for the windshield, just basic stuff like that, not really a huge deal. And the total for this service before the warranty was applied was $3,209.73. Oof. Like I said, with this car, the coil packs are a known expense with it. So to have it documented here gives me a lot of relief. Granted, it has been about 35,000 miles since then, so maybe a little bit nervous, but honestly, I'm not too scared of it. I'm happy that it's been done. The engine runs smoothly in my case, and it's quite something to see that service record in here. The fun continues though. Later in 2015, a floor-wheel alignment was done for this car, and just another basic service and an inspection. That came to $217.31, really not a huge deal. And then in October, at 42,952 miles, this car got another major service, a 10K service, where a bunch of stuff was replaced, a bunch of filters and things like that. Again, not really a huge deal to get all of that done. The total for that came to $443.67. Not a huge deal, but it is nice to see that while big service items were being done with this car, routine, regular maintenance was being done as well. And then to wrap up the year in December of 2015 at 44,355 miles, this car decided to throw a check engine light. And when the tech took a look at things, turned out that it was the right coil that had gone as well. So both coil packs were replaced in 2015 at around the late 30,000 mile mark into the 40,000 mile mark. So both of them were done in relatively quick succession. In addition to that, a transmission service was performed to change the fluid and also replace the filter. And the total for all of this comes to $2,311.41 plus $41.13 in tax. Quite a way to wrap up 2015. And the total for all of the service work comes to $12,152.11. Definitely not cheap, but this guy covered a lot more miles this time, about 9,800 miles, meaning this cost per mile came to about $1.20 a mile. Definitely better than the previous year, but it still shows that this is a very expensive car to own, but I'm happy that he was using it, and we have documentation that the ABC pump and the coils, two huge issues known with this car, have been dealt with in its past. And that brings us to the most expensive year of maintenance with this car, 2017. And we begin in April at 56,606 miles. Now I have to mention that in 2016, only one service was included. This car actually was pretty reliable, and the guy just drove it, clearly racking up some miles with not a lot going wrong with it. So that is very comforting to see. But we begin with a normal 20K service. Yet again, another routine service that's performed on this car. Various fluids and filters are replaced. Not a particularly interesting or particularly expensive service there. The owner then goes on to note that there was a clunk coming from the rear, and the tech found that this was the flex disc on the drive shaft. This is a common problem on BMWs too. I'm not surprised to see that it was failing on a car of this kind of performance. So that was replaced. That was relatively inexpensive, $511.50 for the component and $803.50 for that part of the service, bringing the total of this particular service to $1,320.64 plus $46.75 in tax. Not particularly inexpensive, but not crazy either. The next service comes in August at 60,640 miles. So the car is being driven pretty regularly at this point, which is nice to see. And on this service, it was relatively routine. A general inspection was performed, but there's also a clunk and whine coming from the ABC system. Now, this ended up being pretty expensive. The tech identified that it was the pulsation dampener in the ABC system, which is a $446 part to replace. Some other miscellaneous parts were replaced as well, but the labor on this was really expensive, $3,630 to replace. So I assume it was just really difficult to get to, and a lot needed to be done, as that is a ton in labor. Really crazy to see that. The tech also identified that the motor mounts needed to be replaced at some point, which they were later in the car's history, but they weren't replaced on this particular service. After a couple of other miscellaneous items were done, the total for this service came to $4,567.50. Now, it's clear to me that the owner of this car had met their deductible, because this service cost them nothing. So the warranty was paying for all of it, which is a great thing, but huge one to check off. And again, the car went back out and he continued to drive it. But then comes a whopper, the biggest service that I found in the entire history of this car, and it's a surprising one. In November of that year, at 61,469 miles, the owner stated that there was a whirring noise coming when he would accelerate. The tech took it in and inspected it and found that the secondary air pump was making noise, so they replaced that. That was relatively expensive, $371 for that, a $604.11 line item in the service. However, then the customer stated that the car simply wouldn't move. It was running into issues where it just wouldn't go, and the car actually was towed in for this particular service. After a lot of diagnosis, it turned out that it was the transmission had failed in this car, and they went to replace it. $4,200 is what the transmission alone cost to replace. The torque converter was replaced with that at $1,470. There was a core return that was refunded back and things like that. But the total for just the transmission replacement came to $7,498.75. Ouch. But it doesn't end there. The tech noted that there was a bubbling sound coming from the dash, so they replaced the blower motor, and that seemed to solve that issue. And lo, after performing all of this service, this one comes to $9,062.86 plus $60.41 in tax. And the warranty covered the vast majority of this. The guy ended up only paying $579.02, but that is a big one. And I'm really surprised that the transmission failed. These transmissions are known for being really, really strong, so it's kind of unusual to see a failure in an SL65's past, but that seemed to be what it was. And again, I imagine the guy said, blank check, replace whatever you need to replace. So they ended up replacing the transmission. Oh, but what a cost. And that brings the total for 2017 to a cost of $15,068.16. Now, the owner of the car actually drove it quite a bit. He drove it 5,043 miles over the course of that year, at least according to the service documentation, meaning that it cost him about $3 a mile to own the car if he hadn't had the warranty. I'm sure after getting these bills, I'm sure he was shocked at how expensive stuff was, but I guarantee he thanked his lucky stars that he bought that aftermarket warranty. Now that is a lot of money. All of those years are pretty scary, but when you put it in perspective of how much this car cost new, I guess those ownership costs are kind of commensurate with a car of the $193,000 sticker price that this car had. However, looking at this period of ownership history from 2014 till 2025, there were years that nobody spent any money on this car outside of just oil changes. It was pretty reliable and was pretty uneventful, honestly. And over the total period of time, this car covered just over 33,000 miles. So how much did it cost for this car to cover that mileage? I have it down here right on my phone, and the number is $41,814.98. That is a lot of money to own this car, and it means that the average cost per mile is $1.26. Definitely not inexpensive. But that said, to be honest with you, I'm just so grateful to have the service documentation and know that a lot of the really big things were addressed and it's not so distant past. In addition to that, the owner of this car during that period of time for most of its life continued to drive the car pretty frequently, kind of up until COVID. Then it really clearly became a secondary car. He only drove it a little bit, but still, I also suspect the warranty was starting to run out maybe at that point. regardless, it seemed like during his ownership it was a pretty reliable car for the most part. And so far in my ownership, it's just a pleasant car. It's really nice to cruise around. I have done almost 1,000 miles in it already, and it never gets old, particularly when you put your foot to the floor and the way it picks up speed is just incredible. I'm absolutely in love with the M275 engine. And while I realize that this car is not inexpensive to own by any stretch of the imagination, it seems like it's got a lot of really good, encouraging service history, which really makes me happy. And that one brings me to my main point of this video, and that is that in my experience, when buying cars, you don't buy the car so much, you buy the previous owners. And in this case, it was clear based on the documentation that was retained that the owners of this car in its past have been fastidious, and it's evidenced by the overall condition of this car. Presents really well, it drives really great, and that's because it's been cared for. So despite the fact that it has 72,733 miles on it as of this moment, it seems like it's been one that's had a lot of the gremlins figured out, and it seems like it's going to, I suspect it will be reliable during my ownership. Not sure yet because we're early on in that period of time with it, but I love the car. I really like this thing, and it's difficult for me choosing between the E39 and this on a day-to-day basis. This is just so comfortable and powerful and nice, but the E39 is definitely more engaging, so it's nice to have them both, but I'm definitely not tired of it. Oh, especially when you do that, you just monster off down the road. It's just the coolest. I really like this car, but I know that there may be bumps in the road with it in the future because they're not cheap to take care of. And so while I haven't had that many issues with it, in the next video I do with this car, we're going to take it to a very reputable shop here in San Diego to have a post-purchase inspection done on it, where I can find out everything that's wrong with my SL65. Wish me luck, and I will talk to you all then. Goodbye. Wow. Just wow.